Christopher Hitchens, what are you reading on this Good Friday Passover?
My attention was caught today by a nasty story on the front of the Washington Post World News section about the regional Cold War in South Asia between India and Pakistan, which is gradually going nuclear. And I read through it, looking for a tie-in with a story I read last week about how the United States Congress has overridden the Pressler Amendment in order to supply Pakistan with an enormous quantity of American weapons, in spite of the fact that it refuses to certify that it's not going nuclear. And the tie-in wasn't there. I wish it had been. There was a much better story about another regional Cold War by Ray Bonner in the New York Times last Friday, a week ago today, about the way that Greece and Turkey are rearming for war on a massive scale, both of them being armed by the United States, and it, to the tune of $6 billion in one case and $4 billion in the other, two countries that really can't afford this.
Byron York, do you pay attention to stories like this?
Not as much as I should.
Why?
Because it seems like it's taken all of my time just keeping up with Clinton scandals.
And you picked this morning for your story this one from the New York Times.
It's on the New York Times on page A22. It's called Day of Barbs and Smirks in a Whitewater Trial, and it's about cross-examination of the prosecution's star witness against McDougal's and Jim Guy Tucker. And the odd thing about the Times story is what you didn't read a few days ago. A few days ago, the witness, David Hale, made his allegation finally under oath that the president had pressured him to take this $300,000 loan. Front page of the Washington Post, it was absolutely nowhere to be found in the New York Times. So they print the rebuttal. When the rebuttal to the witness comes out, it makes it into the paper. When the original allegation came out, it was nowhere to be found.
What was your next story that you chose today?
The next story I chose was a theatre review in the New York Times.
Theatre review?
There's been a revival of a wonderful play, which was also a very interesting film, called Inherit the Wind. It's about the Scopes trial of sometimes known as the Monkey Trial in Tennessee, 50 years or so ago.
Why is this of interest to you?
Because it's more than 50 years, actually, isn't it, since Clarence Darrow was on the stand. Shows my age. Because in Tennessee they're trying to do it again. They've just passed a statute saying that you can be dismissed as a teacher if you instruct your pupils that evolution is a scientific matter rather than a matter of debate between evolution and what they now call, which I think is a laugh, intelligent design instead of creationism. You should see the faces, by the way, of those who think that they are the result of an intelligent design. And they've also mandated that the Ten Commandments be displayed in all public offices in Tennessee. And I just thought it shows how plus ça change. But it would be very good if the play was a hit and got put on everywhere else, because people could see exactly what happens when these sorts of ideas are exposed to a fair test.
Now Byron York chose an entirely different story again.
On the federal page, the Washington Post, it's called At the Justice Department, Big Government Keeps Getting Bigger and Bigger. And in this age of reinventing government, when the Clinton administration says it is downsizing government, they've asked for a 20% increase in the Justice Department budget, and as a matter of fact, the budget's gone up 600% in the past 16 years, most of that under Republicans. And there's a huge patchwork quilt of federal enforcement agencies, FBI, ATF, INS, Customs, DEA, all overlapping, and people are beginning to get worried that there are just too darn many and they're not coordinated enough.
Now, Mr. Hitchens, have you seen this? There's a picture of you in here. This is the Washington Times, and they have you here. Looks like it's at a party of some kind.
I have no.
You have no idea, do you?
No, none.
None. Isn't it interesting? We can surprise you with this. Insider Bash proves great investment. This is something that you put on. It's a book called Risky Business by Elizabeth Lucenhop.
Oh, yeah. Very good book.
And what do you're talking to, in this picture, Diana McClellan.
Yes.
Two Brits.
Yes. Old enemy of mine. No, it's a very good book by a woman who was conned by Lloyd's of London into becoming a name, as they call it. You put your name down as a prestige matter, you become an underwriter. But alas, you also become liable. They don't tell you that bit.
Here's Diana McClellan and Michael Barone. Who is Diana McClellan, by the way? You say an old enemy of yours?
Yeah, Diana McClellan used to write a terrible gossip column called The Ear in the Washington Post, and then wrote it even worse in the Washington Times later on.
An enemy of yours?
She wrote a book called Ear on Washington, to which I gave a bad review, and she chose actually this very evening to have her revenge on me in her introductory speech. 14 years she'd waited to revenge herself for a bad review I gave her. It just goes to show.
I mean, the town remembers.
Well, it's flattering to think that, you know, someone's reading you, even if they only read you when it's about yourself. Can I just have a quick look at the picture?
Certainly. You haven't seen it, you didn't know it was coming.
It looks as if I look even
long
more
ago
sordid than I do this morning.
How long ago was this picture taken?
Monday night this was, in one of Washington's better joints. It's a bar specially consecrated to martinis and cigars.
Byron York, let me show you a Tony Auth cartoon from, this morning in the Philadelphia Inquirer. You can see it up there on your screen. Nixon strolling on the beach, great photo ops in history. LBJ exhibits his scar, Dukakis in the tank, and Dole relaxing in Florida. Any reaction?
Now, Maureen Dowd told the story about the Dole photo the other day in the New York Times, and the story she told was that an AP stringer posed as a vacationer, came up while Dole was relaxing and took his photo, went back to the AP and said, well, you need Dole's permission to run it. Went back to Dole, admitted her ruse, and Dole said, fine, run it. So if that story is true, at least it wasn't planned by the campaign to show off his vigor. Any comment?
Just shows how null this campaign is, it seems to me. I mean, to be assigned to the putative or presumptive Republican nominee and to have absolutely nothing to write about at all. Imagine what a miserable job it must be. And see what it says about the fact that this is a campaign with no politics, no issues, no excitement, no interest for anyone at all, and with months to run.
Have either one of you seen this story leading the Los Angeles Times this morning? U.S. okayed Iran arms for Bosnia?
I just saw your discussion of it earlier today.
President Clinton secretly gave a green light to covert Iranian arms shipments into Bosnia in 1994, despite a United Nations arms embargo that the United States was pledged to uphold and the administration's own policy of isolating Tehran globally as a supporter of terrorism, according to senior administration officials and other sources. It's James Risen and Doyle McManus. Doyle McManus is the bureau chief of the Los Angeles Times. Reaction?
And wrote a very good book, or co-wrote with Jane Mayer, a very good book on the Iran-Contra affair, Doyle McManus, and knows what he's talking about. So I imagine the story is true. It strikes me as ridiculous because one of the arguments that those of us who favored lifting the arms embargo always used to make was, look, if you keep the Bosnians under embargo, which is hopelessly unfair because it locks in the imbalance between them and the Serbs, they will turn to fundamentalist regimes for their weaponry. So one reason to lift the embargo is so that the Iranians don't become the opportunist agents in the matter. And now, as well as keeping the embargo on, we find the United States administration was inciting Iran to break it. So it seems that they managed, as so often in their Balkan policy, to contrive the worst of both worlds.
Blaine Harden was here from the Washington Post. He says that this is an important story.
Well, it's certainly a way to get something done without actually doing it. I mean, that's the whole thing about it. They could not simply take the United States government simply couldn't take the action of doing it. They let somebody else do it. Does it talk about what the source of those arms is?
You mean the Iranian arms?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
We didn't sell them to them, did we?
I've read most of the piece and didn't see any reference to that. It suggests in here that the source of this, it doesn't say the source of the story, but the CIA was the most unhappy. They found out about this by using their spy satellites watching the arms come in from Turkey.
So they were out of the loop on this, and it made its way to a reporter.
But actually, I wish I had thought of making that point. I mean, as with this story I mentioned earlier, India, Pakistan, Greece and Turkey, the American press often writes about the international arms bazaar as if the United States wasn't its chief armorer and chief patron and chief manufacturer. I mean, as if, in fact, the United States economy wasn't in many ways a war economy, a fact that's so big that it never gets mentioned.
William Carley has a story in today's Wall Street Journal. CBS, comma, breaking Unabomber story, comma, forced FBI to move in on suspect. And I'll read a little bit of it. As FBI agents closed in on the Unabomber suspect in a remote Montana cabin, Dan Rather of CBS News broke into afternoon programming to announce that the 17-year manhunt was nearing an end. Quote, the FBI is preparing to execute a search warrant, unquote, on the home of the Unabomber suspect, CBS News Washington correspondent Jim Stewart said shortly after 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday. What CBS didn't say, colon, breaking the story forced the Federal Bureau of Investigation to terminate its surveillance of Theodore John Kaczynski, the former mathematics professor who is the Unabomber suspect. FBI agents hurriedly arranged to question the 53-year-old suspect and search his Lincoln, Montana cabin, a process that agents normally prefer to take time and care in planning. This is on page 2. Does it belong there?
Oh, yeah. It's, It was kind of an interesting story. CBS's story was almost drowned in the Ron Brown thing, incidentally. I mean, they were going to have this big exclusive. It goes on to say they knew about it since Monday, and the FBI asked them to please hold off. And they only ran with it, not because the FBI was about to go in, but because they found out that CNN and ABC knew about it and they might get scooped on it, so they decided to go. And the story says a number of people in the FBI are unhappy about it, but on the other hand, CBS knew the story. They had enough to report it, and they should have reported it.
Comment, Mr. Hitchens?
Not really.
Not important?
Don't know why. It doesn't excite me so.
Bum of the month, huh?
I'll be more exciting on some other matter.
We have an article here by Mr. York called Bum of the Month. If you're not a swank celeb, Michael Lewis hates you. Who's Michael Lewis? Michael Lewis is a writer. He writes, he's been writing political coverage for the New Republic lately, and as he began his campaign journal, I read the first few and it just kind of ticked me off, so I wrote that article about him. He made quite a bit of fun of Phil Gramm and some of the rural supporters of Republicans out in Iowa and in New Hampshire. So I contrasted that to a story he wrote in the New Republic about trying to get a summer home and believing or having his real estate agent tell him that the actor Ron Silver owned the summer home next door. And he relates his tremendous excitement and his wife's excitement, and they go almost a year wondering how they could approach the great man and be nonchalant and friendly and approach Ron Silver. They finally find out that some guy named David Silver owns it, no relation, no nothing, and they've been excited for a year for no reason. So I kind of contrasted the way he loved the celebrity and hated the people. You know Michael Lewis?
Met him, yes.
What do you think of Mr. York?
Well, I liked Lewis's campaign coverage, at any rate. I mean, I can't remember now the name of the Republican outsider who he made famous. So he obviously didn't make him all that famous. And so
oh, Maury Taylor.
Maury Taylor,
I love Maury Taylor, yeah.
He was incredibly funny about this guy, Maury Taylor, the tycoon who failed to get any delegates. But who seems like, he made him seem like a very likable and attractive person. And I thought, generally speaking, his coverage was good on the campaign. I remember the Ron Silver diary, though, and I remember feeling piercingly embarrassed by reading it.
Mr. York writes about the New Republic and Michael Lewis. You write about somewhat about Ruth Shalit and the New Republic and other things called plagiarism. What's this about, and when are we going to see it in Vanity Fair?
This is my next fin de siècle, as it's called, column in Vanity Fair, and it's called Steal, this article, because it's a title I owe to my friend Toby Young. Because it's a defense of plagiarism. I thought it was high time someone said a good word for this, and I maintain that plagiarism is really indispensable for literary production, as well as for almost all journalistic production. And it can be a great source of creativity. I distinguish it from vulgar theft, from sort of shoplifting or kleptomania, just simply lifting other people's sentences and putting them in your own. But I put the case of T.S. Eliot, of Martin Luther King, and of a Scottish poet called Hugh MacDiarmid, and show that all of their best stuff had to be based on other people's. But their justification was that they synthesized it and put it out at a higher level, and that's a good and necessary thing. If you say you're against plagiarism, which most people say they are, you're saying you can tell what it is, and to say you can tell what it is means you have to claim to know what the original is, and also what is authentic. And I maintain that's harder to know than most people believe.
Well, they at least took the trouble to rearrange the words, and the problem with Shalit's stuff is that on a number of occasions there appear to be whole sentences that were lifted from other people's stuff. And also the authors are alive and well and living in Washington, so they pointed it out.
Well, I mean, I think she gambled that, I mean, imagine Steve. He's forbidden to land, I think, in Canada and Australia. He's a prohibited immigrant in various other countries. I think it's a pity that this is the case. I think these laws would, in this country, be unconstitutional, and I don't like the way in which the book's been mobbed up, and I don't like the way that the St. Martin's Press gives in, not because of the text, but because of public opinion. I think that's a very bad sign.
Byron York is a Birmingham, Alabama native, and Christopher Hitchens is originally from Portsmouth, Hampshire, England. Or is it, how do you say that? Hampshire?
Hampshire.
Hampshire. Whitesboro, New York. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I was going to ask these two reporters why they think our leftist liberal president has not taken on Mr. Farrakhan like he would take on Mr. David Dukes. It seems to me he's very one-sided, and I think he's afraid of losing the black vote in November. I'd like an answer from both these men, and please don't soft-soap this answer.
Byron York.
I think the answer is what's in it for him to come out and denounce Farrakhan. He can he can go with the people who agree with the good things that Farrakhan says and just try to hide when Farrakhan says something off the wall.
When he refers to the president as a leftist liberal, does that track for you? You think he's a leftist liberal?
It's hard to tell. I think he is in his heart. He's been kind of all over the place, and he's done a pretty good job at trying to appropriate some Republican ideas lately. But sure, I think if he were in office, not worried about re-election, he would come out as a pretty left liberal guy.
Let me ask both of you, so if the audience hasn't caught up to date with your views on this, characterize how you feel about Bob Dole and Bill Clinton right now, about each one of them.
They're like two sides of the same, what shall we say? They're like two haunches of the same rear end.
Do you like either one of them? Would you vote for either one of them?
No, I would not vote for either of them.
Mr. York?
I like Bob Dole. I think he'd be a good president. I think things would be much different if Bob Dole had been president. All these things that were vetoed would not have been vetoed. They would have been passed, and they will be passed if Dole is the president. So he'll sign their stuff.
I just feel I owe the first caller an answer because he was so sure that that he'd asked such a tough question that we couldn't possibly face it. No, I certainly shan't soft-soap it. Of course, Mr. Clinton is not a leftist or a liberal. He's a self-proclaimed and obvious neoconservative. Second, he has, at all occasions I know about, including occasions where no one asked him to do so, been very hostile to anything that could be described as black nationalism. Went out of his way, if you remember, to pick a fight with Sister Soldier, the rap singer, at the Rainbow Coalition meeting. So it's ridiculous to suggest that he's going soft on Farrakhan. Certainly, as far as the black vote's concerned, Farrakhan doesn't believe in elections and doesn't think there's anything to vote for, so I don't think that has anything to do with Mr. Clinton's solicitude for the black vote, in other words, which goes to the Democratic Party no matter what the Democratic Party does to African Americans. But I would just like to say that there is a film going around that I've been trying to promote in my Nation column called Brother Minister. It's a film about the assassination of Malcolm X, and it contains an extraordinary piece of footage, a video of Mr. Farrakhan speaking in his mosque in Chicago, more or less in this, as far as I can see, actually taking credit for the murder of Malcolm X, and I think this film should be more widely distributed than it so far has been. It's been having difficulty getting a distributor. If anyone wants to contact me, I have a number through which they can order it.
Let me just tell our audience what's coming up. We're going to go back to the Navy Memorial down on Pennsylvania Avenue in a little less than an hour. And then at 9:30 East Coast time, which is about an hour and a half away, Connie Broad will join us, our executive producer on this program. We want to listen to you for suggestions, ideas that you might have for the Washington Journal, whether you like or dislike anything that you see here in the morning. You can fax us, and we'll also use those. Before we grab, and we're going to talk to our high school student of the morning, the first vote, someone who's voting for the first time. Remember who you voted for the first time?
Yes, I do.
What year?
1976.
And?
Gerald Ford, don't blame me for Carter.
You can't vote.
No, I haven't voted for a long time. I'm one of those unlucky people who was, when I was 18, there were no votes at 18, and by the time I was 21, I'd sort of missed a chance to vote. I remember I voted for the Labour candidate, but that was in England.
Our student of the morning is Jason Connor of the Edmond Memorial High School in Edmond, Oklahoma. Good morning, Mr. Connor. Are you there, Mr. Connor?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Are you a senior?
Yes, sir.
How old are you?
18.
Have you registered?
Yes, I have.
What party?
Democrat.
Why?
Well, I'm a Jewish student living in Oklahoma, which, of course, is the middle of the Bible Belt, and I've studying in my limited study of the political parties, I've kind of figured that the Democrats are more in favor of religious freedom, if you will. With Buchanan, of course, he's with the, big in with the Christian Coalition and wanting to, not to take away the separation of church and state. I just, Clinton has, he might not have done the best job, but I think I'd like to just see him in there for another 4 years and see who else we can get in for the Republicans.
I understand that you've traveled to Israel, that
Yes,
you're interested in archaeology, that you're a member of the Young Democrats, and that you were a page in both the Oklahoma House and the Senate. When did you do that?
I was a page in the Oklahoma House a month ago exactly, and I was a page in the Senate last year, a week after the Murrah building bombing. I believe that was the...
Now, the president's going to be in Oklahoma City today.
Yes, sir. I believe so.
Are you going to go?
No, I think it was going to be pretty tough to get access to it. I think he wasn't going to make it very public this time. I think he was coming to dedicate a building, but he wasn't going to do that until later. He was just, I think, coming to meet with people today.
Let me go back to what you said. You say your religion is Jewish?
Yes, sir.
Do you feel any anti-Semitism living in Oklahoma?
A little, not so much like anti-Semitism from Nazi Germany with the wanting to per se destroy the Jewish people, but yes, there's my school is very predominantly Christian, and it makes it difficult sometimes. I mean, you can feel a little tension, not against being Jewish, but just because I'm not Christian.
Either one. I want to ask either one of our guests. Do you have any comments on anything Mr. Connor has said, or question you might have for him? How old are your children?
Alexander will be 12 in
American
May.
citizen?
Yes.
Mr. York, you have
father
children?
of 3 Americans.
How big is your school in Mr. Connor in Edmond?
It is, I believe it has about 1,800 students. I could be wrong, 9th through 12th grade.
Are you going to college?
Yes, sir.
What are you going to study?
I think either international business or international law.
And where will you go?
I will be at OU next year and to take my basics, and after that I'd like to possibly attend the University of Texas or another school on the East Coast that would possibly have a bigger Jewish population where I could possibly feel a little more comfortable.
Now, how did you register? Where?
Well, as a matter of fact, my government teacher had, from the beginning of the year, since there were a lot of students that were either 18 or turning 18, she'd been pushing us along to get our voter registrations, and so I got mine in and sent it in, and I think they sent me my card back about 2 weeks ago. So the next election, I'll be ready to vote.
Thanks, Jason Connor, for joining us this morning.
Thank you, sir.
Do you remember in '76 the 26th Amendment was law? How did you register? You remember? Did they register you in high school?
How did it happen? I don't remember.
I mean, we hear this more and more that the teachers are bringing the registration.
No, there was no high school program. I went out and did it myself.
What do you think about the fact that teachers are getting kids to register?
I think it's a fine idea. I have no complaints.
Mr. Tracy,
I think it's extraordinary you have to register to vote. I don't think there's any other country where that's true. Most countries, if you're a citizen, you're a voter.
Just show your driver's
It's one of the many, many things that seem to me to make elections... sorry, I'll start all that again. It's one of the many barriers to having a democratic process in this country, that the Electoral College, when people think the president is elected by popular vote and he's not, registration, getting on the ballot, it's not just enough to run. You can't say, I'd like to be a candidate. You've got to complete a huge number of very onerous formalities. In many states, increasingly, both parties combine to make sure that third parties can't get on. In New York State, you can have a primary where the main challenger isn't allowed on the ballot. Extraordinary number of ways in which the odds are weighted against the democratic process, and they never seem to get mentioned.
Yeah, but the obstacles are going down, down, and down. Motor voter being the last. Sure. I mean, senators used to not be elected by popular vote.
That's true.
And you had to have sort of a fixed address and everything to register to vote. Now you can do it with a driver's license, right?
Get a call from Los Angeles. Good morning.
Good morning.
What are you reading this morning out there? You got the Times yet?
Yes, I do.
What do you think of this story? Did you read this story on the front page about U.S. okayed Iran arms for Bosnia, officials say?
I did read that, or at least the first part of it, with great interest.
Yeah, well, what was your reaction? Is this good or bad, or does it matter?
Well, my reaction was I was very surprised that it seems that American foreign policy in Bosnia is informed by the logic and the values of the social welfare state. That is, the government's empty promise to take care of you while it degrades and diminishes your power to take care of yourself. And instead, it should be informed by the values of America's founding principles, in particular the values of the Second Amendment, the legal guarantee to self-defense, a God-given and inalienable right. And I'm surprised the Clinton administration, at least covertly, affirmed that those values of the Second Amendment.
I hadn't made that connection.
No, I must say, nor had I. I'm not sure I have yet. It's ingenious, though, I must say. And I'm always very impressed by the way that opponents of gun control can find evidence for their view in anything at all, a bit like those people who can find verses of the Quran when they slice an aubergine, or pictures of the Virgin Mary on clouds and so forth. I speak so as someone who very much supports the right to keep and bear arms, but I don't find I'm thinking about it absolutely all the time, as one is apparently supposed to.
Mr. York, we have a fax here from, it looks like J. Tracy, J. Tracy of Virginia Beach. Does working for the Spectator make you jealous and bitter, or are these the requirements to work for the Spectator? The Spectator is well represented on C-SPAN, and I can't help but feel sorry for all of you when you are so unhappy.
Jealous of whom?
Just jealous.
No, I don't think so. Besides, everybody at the Spectator has just been delighted since the Clinton administration came in. It's been great. The circulation has gone up. Lots of stuff to write about. I think it's been a pretty happy time.
Is this a town where you hope your opponents win so that you can win?
Well, as someone who's opposed to both major parties, I certainly find that my life is easier than being a supporter of either one of them. But I think, yes, certainly most of the intelligent people in each party, I think, realize that it can be a very good thing for them to be defeated.
Las Vegas, good morning.
Brian.
Hi.
Good morning, gentlemen. I go along with the gentleman from Vanity Fair said one's the right cheek, one's the left cheek. That's basically true of the choice you got running between Clinton and Dole. I think Clinton, I don't think he's done one thing he said he would do in his campaign except raise taxes since being president. Certainly has no foreign policy that's coherent. And as far as Dole goes, I think he's going to follow. He's going to want to be another Reagan. That's age is going to play a major factor with him. I don't see either one of them as being just the kind of president we need with all the tensions that are mounting in the world lately. North Korea, this thing with Libya. I think we need somebody who's going to stand with a little more backbone. And Dole just seems to be out of, he strikes me as being too grumpy and not really being in touch with reality.
Thanks.
I think Dole is kind of a naturally witty man who seems to be doing his best for the last 4 years not to say a word. I mean, I think people would like Dole a bit more if he'd open himself up, but on the other hand, he might say something like, stop lying about my record, and then it would all fall apart.
Yeah, which counts as a really tough statement in this,
really
incredibly emaciated political culture. That's thought of as stop lying about my record, shot back, Mr. Dole, Gosh, how much more mudslinging can we take? How high can the temperature get? A completely banal remark, and it's thought of as an index of real savagery.
Bill Perkins of Marietta, Georgia says, Byron York is no reporter. He's a hired verbal assassin of our president.
I have no comments.
This one is from someplace called Recovery Information. I think we might have missed part of it. The Dole photo is being used to show his damaged arm is no hidden horror. It puts people's mind at ease.
Possible. Trying to read, I think the photograph, there seemed to be more leg than arm. It was a leg shot, wasn't it?
It's both. But I don't have the photo here. We could show it. Round Top, New York. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I have a question for Mr. Hitchens, or not really a question, more of a comment or a statement. And it was referring to, excuse me, I'm a little nervous there. So his mention on the trouble with the elections in this country, a little bit for democracy. And this was a republic that in its nature, when when the Constitution was created, it was a republic, and it's not really a democracy. And I was wondering if he had a comment on that.
Well, Mr. York corrected me. I mean, amplified anyway what I was saying by saying that obviously there's been an evolution towards democracy. After all, when the country was founded, some of the potential voters were not so much not allowed to vote as actually were allowed to be held as property, for example. It took a long time for them to get the vote, it took a long time for women to get the vote, it took a long time for direct election to the Senate. I like to point out that we're still a long way from direct election of the president, though many people think that that's what they're getting. For example, I'll give you an instance of what I mean. Very, very often, because of the opinion polls, where they stand now, it looks as if Mr. Clinton would be very easily re-elected in the fall. But even if those opinion poll figures were the same in the fall, it doesn't mean he'd be re-elected because of the weighting given to small states by the Electoral College, because of the weird way that Electoral College delegates are selected and distributed and so forth. And I don't know what should be done about it, but I think the first thing is to realize that these obstacles exist and that this is a very bizarre system, that it is a country where you can't just vote by virtue of being a citizen and where you can't just run if all you want to be is a candidate, that there are all kinds of other political tests that have to be passed and met beforehand.
Good morning, C-SPAN. Listening to Hitchens discuss American politics is similar to seeing an Englishman picking his nose. He really has no merit. The itch is not being scratched. Viewpoints, opinions are like most people who display them, with merit or without. A free country permits searing freely, can't read that, also searing freely, also allows for clear thinking, not necessarily hand in glove. E.L. McClister, Bremen, Ohio.
I won't be making a note of that address, I don't think.
How, do you ever get personally angry when people criticize you?
No. I mean, even if they're mean-spirited. No, I get, the Spectator, as a matter of fact, published a letter this issue or last or something by a guy who wrote calling me an ignoramus. It was a terrific letter. So I kind of liked it.
San Diego, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Lamb.
How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. I want to say that I'm happy that Mr. Hitchens is on your show, along with the man from the American Spectator. I find Mr. Hitchens to be very, very interesting. I've seen him on Crossfire several times and Book Notes.
Book Notes.
But what I was curious is in the San Diego Union, it's a big story down here. They had a beating by the police of some illegal aliens, and I was just wondering, it seems like the cops nowadays can't really do their jobs. I mean, I myself have had police officers pull their guns on me for far less, and I've never cried police brutality or anything like this. And I was kind of curious of what Mr. Hitchens and the gentleman from the American Spectator feel.
Thanks, Mr. York.
Well, I haven't had the police pull a gun on me, and I think it would be, I'd take it pretty seriously if they did. One of the things about this has been played on national and local news for the last few days. Played again last night when the immigrants filed suit. But there hasn't been much attention to the underlying behavior, which was the 70, 80-mile chase at 70 or 80 miles an hour, in which the cops tried to get the truck to stop and were unsuccessful.
Well, I think that's not the case, because, I mean, I know all about that. It seems to me I read it in the same story. It's all a matter of what you decide yourself is salient about the story. It seems there was a chase. The allegation is they were throwing stuff off the truck at the police car and so forth. Fact is that it's fantastically unprofessional for any police officer, once people have stopped, put their hands on the wheel and are sitting still, to drag them out and knock them around, especially if they're female. And, you know, there are no circumstances in which that's professional police behavior.
Facts. Investigation of Ron Brown. Will the investigation continue in any fashion, or has Brown's tragic death converted a potential felon into St. Ron?
The independent counsel, Daniel Pearson, announced yesterday that the investigation into Brown himself is over. The funny thing about the Brown special prosecutor was that he was also mandated to look into the affairs of Nolanda Hill, who was Brown's business partner and funneled him hundreds of thousands of dollars for services that are still not clear. She may be, I think, the only private citizen in America with her very own special prosecutor. And the investigation into what she did and the money she may have defrauded SNLs out of is going to continue, but probably by a conventional prosecutor.
Kennesaw, Georgia. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. I was listening to the program the other day, and I heard a guy call in about Kenneth Starr, the investigator for Whitewater, that he had had a conflict of interest in the fact that his law firm had been, being investigated by the RTC while he was investigating the RTC. So I went down to the library. I found the Nation magazine that it was in. I started to read the article, and I was just incredulous that this guy hasn't been pulled out. It also makes everything he does seem like it's skewed because, remember, they removed Fisk because they said they want to protect against the perceptions of conflict. Yet this gentleman, Mr. Starr here, has entered into a secret agreement with the RTC to settle a case against his own law firm. Doesn't that seem a little odd to... and why isn't that in the American Spectator?
Mr. York.
Well, it just came out, so it hasn't been, the Spectator is a monthly. But the thing that I think Starr should do, and that he's done wrong, is that he should be doing this full-time. He should have left his law firm. He should be doing it full-time to get it over quicker and not be doing law business on behalf of any clients right now.
How much of this has the Nation done on the Kenneth Starr story?
There was one big cover story about it, and I think there have been a couple of follow-up pieces since by Murray Wass, and I'm just trying to remember the other author's name, sorry. Anyway, very interesting stuff, thoroughly to be recommended.
Chico, California, go ahead, please.
Yes, I had a question for the gentleman from Vanity Fair. And we were talking earlier about democracy on C-SPAN, and I was wondering what he thought about the idea of our nation having the opportunity to have a binding national referendum.
A binding national referendum? As what?
It wouldn't matter so much on what the issue was, but the fact that we don't have it, maybe we should have the chance to have that.
You mean any referendum, like California does?
Exactly.
Can you have propositions in California when it's not an election year? I don't think you can you? They have to get on the ballot as
you have to get petitions and get on the ballot.
So it's while people are voting anyway. Which seems to me interesting, I mean, because it gives us a scope for citizens' initiative, and it doesn't substitute for the electoral process, which is what I often think people who demand referendums are, with some part of themselves, hoping to do.
Baron York?
Well, that would kick out 200 years of reliance on the states to do things. I mean, when you want to amend the Constitution, you have to do it through Congress and then through the state legislatures. And the idea of having one big up or down vote would be pretty much against anything that's ever been practiced in American government.
Chicago, you're next.
Good morning.
Hi.
Mr. Hitchens, it occurs to me that in the past the Catholic Church was used by the wealthy classes to keep the working class in line. It strikes me today that people don't have as much trust of their churches, so now we have this psychology industry that seems to be doing this. We have people like Nathaniel Brandon, big fan at the Cato Institute, and all of these people seem to be in the business of getting people to believe that they're not victims and that they're not exploited, when the simple fact is, if they're working for a capitalist, they are being exploited. Could you comment, please?
Well, exploitation in the sense in which you're using it is a moral absolute. In other words, it's just if you work for anyone at all, you're being exploited, or even if you have a job. Actually, what exploitation means in the original Marxist schema is the share of the value of your work that you get back or not. The role of religion in reinforcing that. When you say people are losing their faith in the churches, it seems to me you're wrong. The credulity about religion is at an all-time high, and the churches all seem to be doing tremendously good business. I don't think that the therapy industry will ever succeed in substituting for it. I've never heard Mr. Brandon's tapes. I understand that he was at one stage a leading member of the Ayn Rand movement, who's, of course, best-known supporter and acolyte at the moment is Alan Greenspan, the Federal Reserve. A fact that never ceases to astonish me.
Why?
That the guy at the Federal Reserve is a supporter of Ayn Rand. If you ever read The Fountainhead or Atlas Shrugged or any of this stuff, it's pretty vertiginous material.
Well, when Nathaniel Brennan was here for book notes a lot of years ago, as a matter of fact, this is our 7th anniversary this week, we had a picture of Alan Greenspan along with Ayn Rand. He was a part of a 9-member, she called it her collective.
Collective?
Yes.
No, that's bizarre. Well, I think Mr. Greenspan was married to Brandon's sister or something like that. I mean, he certainly was very much part of the inner circle, yes.
This, Brian New York, this front page piece, both in, I think it's in the Baltimore Sun, it's also in the Washington Post, NIH, that's the National Institutes of Health, scientist charged with abusing teen. Nobel laureate has brought dozens of boys to Maryland from overseas. This is Daniel Carlton Kadusik, 72 years old, who shared a Nobel Prize in '76 for research on a new kind of organism that creates human disease, was arrested in the driveway of his house in Middletown near Frederick. It's in Maryland. After returning home from a trip overseas, he was booked into the Frederick County Jail on state charges involving child abuse and perverted sexual practices and was held on $1 million bond. Any comment?
Well, this couldn't help but attract a lot of attention. As I looked into it last night, he's brought a number of boys over, mostly boys, over from Micronesia and New Guinea. And when you look at his Who's Who in America reference, it lists 40 children. One of those has gone to the cops and alleged that he abused him sexually, and he made some kind of bizarre comments to local news crews last night as he was being driven away. Probably shouldn't have talked at all.
San Diego, you're next.
Good morning, Brian.
Hi there.
My name's Mac. I was wondering why the media, and especially C-SPAN, hasn't reported upon the fact that a young girl was kidnapped from Los Angeles, driven at high speed. They crashed the border and went into Mexico. The Mexican gendarme pulled a weapon and shot and killed her, and the driver is wounded. But everybody's making a big to-do about illegal aliens who wouldn't lie down on the ground as ordered by 2 officers who spoke both English and Spanish to the woman and the man.
Did you find, the first answer to your first question, we don't know about that here, but that's not...
Why don't you check with KNSD TV or KFMB TV here in San Diego?
Well,
they have video of it.
Well,
sir.
thanks. That's why
it doesn't sound as if it has been ignored by the media.
Yeah, well, we don't report the news except what happens in this town unless you call us, and that's what this is all about. But let me go to the second point. Does that... Do you find nothing wrong with what the officers did there in light of what happened with the Mexicans?
Number one, the excerpt that the media is showing is only the last excerpt of the video. It's not showing what led up to it, which they do have. It's not showing the 6 to 8 cars that were run into by the pickup truck, and it doesn't have the sound where the officers told the man and the woman to lie down on the ground. If the woman had stayed in the car with her hands on the dashboard, she wouldn't have gotten into any trouble, but she tried to get out and get away.
Mr. York.
I think the chase story only shows, the shooting story, shows that law enforcement is wilder in Mexico. Doesn't really speak to anything that was done in the LA case.
Is there any way, from what you know now, that you would justify what those officers did?
Not the beating. I think, look, you can try to be understanding that, and, you listen to the police radio, and these guys are, all completely on edge. They're full of adrenaline when they finally make the stop. But no, you can't justify beating them like that.
Mr. Hitchens?
Well, I think we just did this. I had the impression we went through all this a few minutes ago.
Well, you never know what you get.
I'm not sure that wasn't a call from San Diego as well, but anyway.
You may be right, maybe the same
I'm not
caller.
making this up, am I? We did just do all that.
Do you know what day this is?
And I did say what I thought about why policemen should not hit people once they've arrested them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Long Island.
I'll gladly,
Long Island, good morning.
Good morning. First of all, when you first come on this morning, this Mr. York, when the Turkey, Pakistan was brought up, he said he wasn't interested. Well, that's true. The only thing the Spectator knows is to anti-Clinton. I mean, we could be getting bombed, and they'd be yelling, "Get Clinton, get Clinton." And the next one is the Washington Times. Same thing. You had a reporter on yesterday who you questioned all the things that he was against Clinton. Then you brought Throw on and said that was a balanced program. But none of those questions were asked to that man. He, of course, he was too intelligent for some of the questions to start with. And the last point is that when you were bringing up Amos, Brian, you berate yourself. You act like this giddy person, so caught up. I mean, after all, it was your vice president who invited him. So you had to run. You made a lot of attention with that story.
Caller, hold on. It was not our vice president that invited him.
Someone called in, and the one moderating that day said your vice president. They asked if anybody in C-SPAN had anything to do with hiring.
No, it didn't happen that way. He was.
Why did someone in your program say it did?
Someone didn't. He was invited by the fellow who is the chairman of the Radio and Television Gallery. His name is Keenan Block, and he works for the McNeil-Lehrer Report.
Yeah, well, that doesn't surprise me. Lehrer is completely I stopped watching him. I used to watch him faithfully every night. Stopped watching him because he's so slanted against Clinton. But even today, how many times have you brought up that one story when someone out west came on the phone? You again brought up the story about the arms and stuff, and it was your suggestion to that man, not that man telling you what he had to say.
Well, it's the lead story in the Los Angeles Times, and it's by the Washington bureau chief of the Los Angeles Times. And we sit here every day and hear people tell us that all those newspapers are liberals and that they're for Bill Clinton. I've got a fact sheet that says that all we hear from the liberal press is pro-Clinton stuff. So how do you explain that?
Well, I think because anytime they don't like anything said, it's blamed on the liberal press. Even their center there, it's the liberal press, and I find them both ways, the Times, all of them.
Let me read you this, and help me understand this. This is a comment for the Washington Journal, which it says, you lost your balance of two sides of the issues when at 7 a.m. you only had one reporter on the air. When this reporter is Democratic, liberal-leaning person, which 80% are, you really get a biased view because he is commenting on the primarily Democratic-leaning print media in Washington. Explain that.
Well, I explain it in the way that I didn't, if you have someone on that's completely on the right, the attacks are really unbelievable. I didn't see him attacking. He was given his opinion, and I'll respect even the right's opinion if they're not attacking. Like you just brought up this story of this man that was arrested. Well, there was another story in the other day how Jeff Bush down in Florida was on the board of another failing bank. I never heard anybody in C-SPAN bring that up. You know, I know we all think towards what we think, but it's... I was a Republican, and I changed this year. And my husband still is registered Republican. We're in a very Republican area, but he'll never vote for Republican unless they come up with someone that Dole, we've watched him for years. He has a nasty, nasty way, and anybody that goes back a long time knows that. So I've always voted for whoever I thought was the best, you know, and I've made my mistakes. I voted for Nixon. Big mistake. So I really try to listen fairly, but I just get, and I don't, as I said, you have an excellent program. Getting into this giddy gossip mode that you get into sometimes drives me crazy. I can get that with a bunch of people when I see them out talking.
Brian Lamb, the giddy, irresponsible figure. I've always been missing something. You must be leading a life that's secret from me. I'm always very impressed when I come on this show at how convinced some people are that there is such a thing as a media bias in favor of one party or another, or against or for the president. I mean, it seems to me self-evident that there is a tremendous bias in the media, and that the bias is in favor of bipartisanship. That's what every journalist is hoping to demonstrate, and every newspaper is trying to encourage. And that's what makes so much of the coverage boring and half-hearted, of course.
I like the call. It's just me and Jim Lehrer on the radical right.
Santa Barbara, you're next.
Okay.
You're on.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Mike is my name.
Good morning, Mike.
It's good to get through to you.
Good to have you get through.
All right. I've just been watching your show for the last few months, and I really like it, and appreciate it very much. The last caller, they were, trying to indicate that in some way or another that you or C-SPAN was included in the left-leaning media, or did I misunderstand that?
No, I think she was...
No, the anti-Clinton.
Yeah, the anti-Clinton media.
Yeah, it's the same argument, but made about a different topic.
Yeah. Well, what I find about the right is they have or at least very few of them have the ability to give an opinion without attacking. And I find that true in The Spectator, and it's Clinton, to my way of thinking, practices the politics of community. They accuse him of being wishy-washy and going back and forth. I see him coming from trying to bring people together, where the right seems to be divisive by its very nature.
I'm confused, caller. You just said that the right was able to comment on Bill Clinton without attacking or by attacking?
They weren't able to give an opinion without attacking.
Oh.
And Clinton, they accuse him of being wishy-washy or going back and forth, and actually what he's trying to do is he's practicing the politics of community or bringing people together.
All right, thanks. And we're about out of time.
Politics is division by definition, I suppose. It's pointless saying this to people, but I mean, I love it when people say, but this is the politics of division. What is politics but division? It's saying the politics of bringing people together. It's like saying the politics of agreement. By definition, it's apolitical.
Here's a fax that says, I love the Washington Journal. We hear constantly about the liberal press. If this is so, how do you account for the great press coverage of President Clinton every day for the past 4 years? At this point in the game, on Passover, Good Friday, I don't know what to think. If people say, what do you think? I say, how can I possibly know what to think after sitting here and listening to all these callers? What are we supposed to think after this?
Well, the left is calling
him
him wishy-washy all the time. And, as far as attacks from the right are concerned, I mean, there are attacks. I will say the things that I've written I think are based on a lot of evidence. I did a big piece about reinventing government a while back that was just based on all the stuff I could find from the Clinton administration.
Why did President Clinton cross the road?
Why?
Because he wanted to get to the middle.
Is that the last comment for this program?
If we've only got one, yeah.
What are you two doing for the weekend?
Can't remember. Is it the weekend?
It's a holiday.
All days are working days for me.
I'm working on a story, I hate to say this, about the president's insurance policies.
We are out of time. Excuse me. Byron York is a contributing writer for the American Spectator. He's a University of Alabama graduate. He's a University of Chicago master's degree holder in American history, a Birmingham, Alabama native, a former producer for WPLG in Miami, and a former CNN producer, 82 to 87. What did you do at CNN?
I did everything. I started, like most people do at CNN, on the floor, running teleprompter and camera, and then worked up through writing and copy editing and then producing.
So all these folks standing out here, we can expect them to be at our desk here. Michelle, you're going to be over here at this desk with your opinion soon.
Someday.
Did you ever think you were going to be in the opinion business?
No, but I just, it developed into a good sidelight.
And Christopher Hitchens, Portsmouth, England native, graduate in philosophy at Oxford. Also was foreign editor with the New Statesman, Washington editor of Harper's at one point. Is currently, since 1981, contributing editor to The Nation and contributing editor to Vanity Fair.
That's it.
Thank you very much.
Anytime.
We're going to unhook you as we continue here with open phones until the top of the hour.